A luxury Miami high-rise, an Instagram model with millions of followers, a boyfriend found dead on the kitchen floor, and one question that still divides the internet: did she defend herself or did she kill him? This is Crime Scene Archives. On social media, Courtney Clenney seemed to have the perfect life. A successful fitness model and influencer known as Courtney Taylor, she showcased a world of endless luxury, exotic trips, exclusive parties, and a glamorous apartment with stunning ocean views. To her followers, she was living the dream, but behind the perfectly filtered posts and curated smiles, her relationship with her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, was anything but perfect. It was volatile, chaotic, and spiraling out of control. Police had been called to their lavish Miami apartment multiple times in the months leading up to April 2022. Neighbors frequently reported hearing loud, screaming arguments. They described the sounds of things being thrown, of a relationship constantly on the brink of combustion. The idyllic picture painted online was a complete fabrication. The reality was a stark, dangerous contrast. And it's in that gap between perception and reality where the story begins to fracture. On the afternoon of April 3, 2022, emergency services received a frantic 911 call from Courtney. Christian had been stabbed. Paramedics rushed to the scene, finding him on the floor with a single, devastating wound to his chest. He was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead. Courtney's story to the police was that the couple had been arguing. She claimed Christian had pushed her against a wall, and in a moment of terror, fearing for her life, she grabbed a knife from the counter and threw it at him from across the room.
It was, she insisted, a desperate act of...
But investigators were skeptical from the very beginning. The idea of someone throwing a knife with such lethal accuracy seemed improbable, more like a scene from a movie than a real-life domestic dispute. Despite their doubts, and to the shock of many, Courtney was not immediately arrested. For a brief period, she was held for a mental health evaluation and then released. This decision ignited a firestorm of public outrage, especially among Christians, family and friends who insisted he was the true victim. Then, a piece of evidence surfaced that would change everything. Leaked elevator surveillance footage from inside their apartment building, recorded just months before the killing, went viral. The video shows Courtney launching a physical attack on Christian. She's seen striking him, pulling his hair, and hitting him repeatedly. Throughout the assault, Christian appears to be trying to fend her off and de-escalate the situation, never once fighting back aggressively. The footage was raw, disturbing, and it completely reshaped the public narrative. Was Courtney the one in danger? Or was the abuse actually the other way around? The video seemed to provide a clear, unsettling answer. Suddenly, the self-defense claim began to look a lot weaker. And the question everyone was asking was, what really happened inside that apartment on that fatal day? Forensic evidence would soon add another critical layer to the case. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy determined that Christian's wound was approximately 3 inches deep. It was a downward-angled stab, consistent with significant force being applied. This wasn't the kind of injury you'd expect from a knife thrown lightly across a room. Prosecutors seized on this detail, arguing that the angle and depth of the wound proved the knife had been plunged directly into Christian's chest, not thrown. If they could prove that, the self-defense argument would become almost impossible to sustain. It was the difference between a panicked reaction and a deliberate act. But Courtney's defense team held firm. They painted a picture of a young woman trapped in an abusive and toxic relationship. They argued that she was the long-term victim of Christian's controlling behavior, stalking, and physical assaults. They presented private messages, pointed to previous police calls where she was listed as the victim, and described a pattern of escalating threats that left her in constant fear for her safety. They claimed that the elevator video, while unflattering, didn't tell the whole story. It was just one moment in a long, complex, and mutually destructive relationship. Toxicology reports later confirmed that both Courtney and Christian had alcohol in their systems that day, adding another layer of complexity to the sequence of events. So, what was the truth? And what was simply a carefully constructed narrative? 4 months after Christian's death, in August 2022, the case took a dramatic turn. Courtney Clenney was arrested while in Hawaii undergoing rehabilitation for substance abuse and post-traumatic stress. She was extradited back to Florida and formally charged with second-degree murder. The battle lines were drawn. On one side, prosecutors armed with the elevator video, forensic evidence, and testimony from building security who frequently complained about her aggressive behavior. They portrayed her as a violent aggressor who finally went too far. On the other side, a defense team arguing she was a battered woman who acted in a moment of sheer terror, a victim of a system that often fails to protect women until it's too late. Few cases in recent memory have polarized public opinion so intensely. On social media, the debate raged. Some saw Courtney as a woman who finally fought back against her abuser, a tragic but justified act. Others saw her as a privileged influencer, whose wealth and status initially protected her from the consequences of her actions. Every new piece of information, every leaked text message, every court filing seemed to flip the narrative. Was he the abuser, or was she? The internet became a jury, with millions of people choosing a side based on limited, often biased information. The legal process has been slow and methodical. The trial, originally expected in 2023, has been pushed back repeatedly into 2024 and beyond. Pre-trial hearings have revealed even more about the couple's tumultuous life. Arguments over what evidence is admissible, challenges to forensic analysis, and strategic legal maneuvering have prolonged the proceedings. Defense experts continue to challenge the prosecution's conclusions about the knife wound, while prosecutors remain steadfast in their claim. The knife was not thrown. If convicted of second-degree murder, Courtney Clenney faces a sentence of up to life in prison. If she is acquitted on grounds of self-defense, the fierce debate surrounding the case will only intensify, raising difficult questions about domestic violence, self-defense laws, and the influence of social media on our justice system. This case has become about so much more than what happened in a single moment. It's a story about perception versus reality, about the power of an online image, and about the complexities of determining who is a victim and who is an aggressor in a toxic relationship. A man is dead. A woman claims she was fighting for her life. A video shows a history of violence. Forensic evidence contradicts her story, and while millions of strangers have already delivered their verdict online, the only one that matters will be delivered in a courtroom. Until that day, the case of Courtney Clenney and Christian Obumseli remains in the gray area between guilt and innocence. And sometimes, that gray area is far more unsettling than black and white, because it forces us to question everything we think we know about justice, abuse, and the stories we choose to believe. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to Crime Scene Archives for more deep dives into complex cases.